Paranormal in Pennsylvania may discuss topics such as suicide, murder, and other potentially upsetting things. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to Paranormal in Pennsylvania,
where we discuss history and haunts.
Today's story takes us to yet another haunted brewery. I'm Sarah.
And I'm David.
Let's get into it.
I like this. I like where we're going with this. You say yet another, but I'm like, yeah, that's it. This is it. This is where we need to be.
I like it. I think haunted breweries are interesting because a lot of times it's not the original use case of the building. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know what? That brings in a very interesting... I want to cover a truly, from original use brewery that's also haunted.
Well, do I have a story for you. Welcome to Penn Brewery.
I've never heard of this place.
Yeah, that's not true because we've been here multiple times. It's part of why we picked it. I actually didn't know that it was haunted, but they advertise their hauntings.
Oh.
Yeah. How did we know? Another one right under our nose. We've eaten there many times.
I've drank there many times.
Yeah. Thoughts on the beer?
Solid beer. I like their beers that are released in the wintertime. The December release is very good.
I mean, that's aligned with what types of beers you like in general. But yeah. Okay, so the history. Like we said, a brewery that is haunted and was originally used as a brewery. Very interesting. So it was actually 3 breweries that operated where Penn Brewery now sits. And it dates back as early as 1848.
For when it opened or the haunting?
When it opened. This is the history.
Okay.
Yeah. There were various mergers, acquisitions, and restructurings over the second half of the 19th century. So it went from these 3 breweries that were kind of in competition, kind of working together, and then ended up completely restructuring the Pittsburgh brew scene.
Oh, what is it called? Where it's like a bunch of farmers are working together.
Like a co-op?
Yeah, like a co-op.
Kind of. They were primarily owned and operated by the Eberhard and Ober families. So these were the big names in brewing in the Pittsburgh area. And at this time, refrigeration was not widespread, so they needed a solution for this. What can you do to keep things cold? Bury them in the ground. For this reason, they developed actually caves and tunnels beneath their breweries that they were using to help keep the beer cold.
Yeah, I think that's, or at least putting the beers in the cellar is fairly common practice, especially for European beers or German style beers.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, you think of wine caves or champagne caves in Europe. So, I mean, it makes sense, but I wouldn't have thought of it happening here in Pittsburgh.
Makes sense to me or at least to me that it's not necessarily novel. It's still really cool because if you're going to be a brewery here in the United States, why would you change? There's still a fairly similar climate to here to let's say Berlin. Don't quote me on this because I actually don't know how similar the climates are.
Never been to Berlin.
Oh my gosh, all the time. Yeah, but
maybe Amsterdam.
Yeah, so it's not crazy shift in climate, so it still makes sense that those practices are continued here.
Yeah, and very smart. Use what you have. So these were known as Lagering caves, and Penn Brewery is one of the few breweries in Pennsylvania that still has its original Lagering caves.
Oh, but that's really cool. I didn't know that part.
Yeah, and apparently sometimes you can tour them, which is really cool.
That was going to be my immediate follow-up. I was okay, so can we go see this?
Yeah. And 3 of the buildings from the era of the Eberhards and Obers remain as part of the present-day Penn Brewery complex because it is a complex. It's not just the one building. They have multiple different buildings or sub-buildings of that building. And they are actually listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and the National Register of Historic Places includes the Lagering caves.
That's cool.
I know. I didn't think that you could get a cave on that, but it's historic places, not historic buildings.
Right. Yeah. And a cave is a place.
Yeah. So Penn Brewery is Pittsburgh's oldest and largest brewery for this reason, but Penn Brewery itself didn't open until 1986. They also focus on German beers, like you were saying.
German lagers.
And they adhere to Bavarian purity laws for most of their beers. They have since expanded from their opening to include American-style beers, but their first beer and their flagship is the Penn Pilsner. The brewery does lean into the hauntings, and they host an event called Prost to the Ghost.
I love it. Great name.
I know, it's genius.
Because it rolls off the tongue, you know? It's like fun to say. Prost to the ghost.
Yeah. And they offer a wide variety of German-themed food and tons of beers rotating. And it is a really beautiful building. You can tell that there's historical influences when you're there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on to the hauntings.
Spooky.
With a feature like Lagering Caves, it would be surprising if that area wasn't haunted.
Well, hold on. Walk me through your reasoning there.
I just feel like people are like...
Is it because it's a cave, or is it because there's beer in the cave?
Yes. No, I just think, people are always looking for hauntings in places that are creepier, like caves.
Okay, yeah, I'm far more inclined to agree. You're like, oh, the Lager Cave, definitely haunted. I'm like, why? Why is it haunted? Because it's a Lager Cave.
No, it doesn't have to do with the lager, more so the cave. These old tunnels from the 1800s underneath the city is kind of what I was thinking.
Mm. Yeah, their secret ingredient was they were actually putting people in for the sugars and fermenting them. And that's why it's haunted, right?
No.
Oh, okay, good.
That is incorrect. Don't perpetuate that. So people report things in these caves, and it's a wide variety of odd things. People say that it almost feels like a dungeon down there.
Because it's a cave.
Right, but what makes it a dungeon is what I was thinking.
Well, because you think of how media portrays dungeons, dark, wet, cave-looking things with manacles on rock walls.
Yeah, but do they have manacles on the rock walls in these Lagering caves?
No,
I assume no.
But it probably checks
most
cold, dark, wet.
Yeah.
So it's that's 3 of the 5 boxes. So
yeah,
is a dungeon.
And people report seeing things varying from shadow figures to full body apparitions. Now, shadow figures in a Lagering cave, of course, could be there, but in low light scenarios, I'm always very, very skeptical.
Right. And so my immediate thought with this is how far back do they go? The shadow figures. So before electricity was likely run through those caves, were you doing it by candlelight, torchlight that casts many shadows?
That is a good point. It didn't say when these claims were, only that they've persisted for a long period of time. So I'm guessing at least since the advent of electricity. Right.
And then even then, original light bulbs weren't perfect, so there were fluctuations in luminosity.
Yeah.
Luminosity?
I think even now, it's possible that there could be flickering or tricks of the eye in low light scenarios, but that's not to say that they're not down there.
Right. This is not me just saying oh, yep, throw this one totally out the window. This is just some of my skepticism coming through for parts of it.
Right. And I think that's good. One report is of a man in suspenders who haunts the tunnels and the caves. He's said to be helpful, and when he runs into people, he actually asks them how he can help them. So this is a haunting that it might not be intelligent in terms of knowing that they're a ghost, but it's a ghost that is interacting regularly with people and able to modify their responses based on the interactions.
Interesting. Because there's if I came upon a spirit that says can I help you? My first, I guess this may be a modern take. It is oh, you don't want me here. Can I help you?
Oh, it's not like that. I mean, I think tonality has a lot of it.
Yeah.
I think it's more oh, can I help you?
Yeah, how can I help you?
Right. And he's also seen in the lobby of the brewery, and he appears to be working whenever he's seen. So many people assume that he's just an old employee, which I think is probably a good bet.
He was just, too much in love with the Pilsner, the Lager, and the St. Nick Doppelbock? Oh, it's the St. Nick something. It's the beer I was referencing earlier.
That you really like?
Yeah, I like it when it's released, but I do like their light beers too.
And I also wonder if maybe aside or in addition to being an employee, I wonder if he's a member of one of the families, because these were huge brewing families.
Oh, that's...
And everyone was involved back then.
Oh, but if it was a member of the family, you really want to identify who it was, right? Because when it's a nameless but helpful, nice spirit, great. But when you can put as we've always discussed, putting a name to the face is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. But no one's been able to identify them by image, which is why I think people think they're not a family member. But
Yeah.
they could be.
Just one of the brewers or somebody that just really loved working at the brewery.
Yeah, very passionate about beer. Just wants to continue to help. I mean, it doesn't sound like a bad gig. Like, you're still in the brewery. If you loved your job, you're there, you get to interact with new people.
You probably get free product or highly discounted product.
I'm talking about him as a ghost.
How do you know he doesn't drink the product still?
Well, that would be free.
Well, at this point, is it free or is it more of like kind of stealing?
I mean, he
What
put in
happens-
his time. He's working.
I guess so.
He's got to be paid somehow.
I guess so. Fair. Very fair.
Staff also report strange happenings after close. These specifically seem to happen around 3 a.m., which, as we know, is a time when the paranormal tend to be pretty active, 2, 3 a.m. Many people refer to it as the witching hour. Staff report doors slamming and the sounds of footsteps, even if they're alone in the brewery. And I am normally very skeptical of slamming doors, but the staff in this case are very familiar with the building. People are there regularly, so they would make sure that the doors' hinges were functioning correctly. So I think if the staff are claiming that a slamming door is a haunting, I'm more likely to give credit to it because it's clearly something that doesn't happen often.
Yeah, but so checking that the hinges work correctly is like, sure, that's like doing part of the check, but also like the airflow and like trying to, I don't know, I guess record like what was the state of the weather and such when these door slammings happened. Obviously, that's being like hyper specific data driven.
Right. And I just think, given that they think it's related to hauntings, it must happen very infrequently.
Right.
And I think if it was happening frequently, the owners of the brewery would be investigating why a door was slamming. You know,
Yeah.
footsteps I'm skeptical of because it is an old building, and yes, it's been renovated and refurbished, but the creaking sound associated with footsteps, I think, can easily be old buildings settling.
Right. Because I imagine it's still the old bones of the building are like still the same original like, timber and such that were used.
I don't know. I would assume so. Another thing reported is just general shadow figures that are seen throughout the brewery. And I know the place is normally packed. It's very busy. We haven't seen anything when we are there. Not that we were necessarily looking for shadow figures, but I think because it's so busy, it would be really hard to identify an apparition. I think shadow figures you would be able to identify, but it makes me wonder if in addition to the shadow figures that are kind of seen throughout, there are apparitions that people just think are regular customers.
So I get what you're saying about the apparitions, but the shadow figure, even when it's really busy, like that's going to be really hard to like, catch and like point out and be like, that was a shadow figure.
You think? I think if you see a shadow figure like walking in front of you.
Well, so that would imply that like you have a very clear line of sight on it. But like normally with Penn Brewery being as popular as it is, there's quite a few people there. So
I see.
How are you really going to catch that?
I see what you mean. Yeah. I guess I was thinking it could still happen in like the elevators to go to the second floor or the stairwells or something.
Right. Like the stairwell to the basement bathroom.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah. Like that could make more sense. But like in just like the main hall, like, bar areas, I'll call them, or outdoor areas.
Yeah. No one really has good line of sight. That's a good point. Yeah.
Again, not discounting. I bet there are shadow figures. I just don't think that you'd be able to really catch them in a crowded bar.
Yeah. And I was thinking, there's no evidence or like photos that I could find of apparitions or shadow figures here, but I can imagine it would be challenging to get photos of these. Especially you'd need to be very reactive with your camera, like ready to go type thing.
Right. Well, that being said, though, Penn Brewery, if you end up ever seeing this and have some footage or photos, feel free to send it to us. We'll happily throw it on, like, the socials.
Yeah,
Share it.
There was one Pittsburgh-based paranormal group that did do an investigation here. But if you want another Pittsburgh-based paranormal group to do an investigation, we would love to, because that leads me into, would you visit this place? I absolutely would. I don't think I have any caveats here. Normally, I say, I might not want to stay overnight. I might not want to do X, Y, Z. Here, I'm all in.
Yeah, the question I often like, this is so silly to answer, because it's like we've identified, we've been there many times. So would I visit this place? Imagine me suddenly saying like, no, absolutely not.
Well,
but
some of the places, once you learn about the hauntings, you could change your opinion.
I guess so. But the beer's good. The times have been good. So, no, I'll definitely go and visit. And I would do an investigation here, yes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is would you do an overnight investigation? Would you feel comfortable sleeping here, etc.?
Yeah, I'd have no trouble whatsoever.
Yeah, I think it would be super cool. I think there haven't been a ton of investigations there. And, you know, when you do an investigation, you can be the most skilled paranormal investigator ever. But if it's just not a night where the spirits are feeling like interacting, you could get nothing. So I think it would be cool to go a few times, actually, and try to identify family member ghosts that are there. Because I just can imagine when you're these two giant brewery families, there's emotional ties, etc. to the land. They must be there somewhere, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I mean, they could be there. But then that always brings up the question of, like, what makes a ghost stay in the world? If they had, like, very fun, happy lives, maybe they maybe they all moved on, or maybe there is somebody there still.
Right.
You know.
That's true. But I think it would be interesting to at least try and research more into the families, because that's why we care about the history, right? If you go into an investigation and you know the history, you know about who the ghosts might be, you can make a more educated attempt at communication.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is all for Penn Brewery. If you've been there and you've experienced hauntings or just attended Prost to the Ghost, let us know about it, because we really want to attend that event next year. And thank you for tuning in for this week's episode of Paranormal in Pennsylvania. Tune in next Thursday to see what history and hauntings we discuss next. Stay spooky, my friends.